Do you see the stupidity of that? Nah, it doesn't work. The oath of the Commonwealth Constitution, that's the schedule. It says, now this is what it says, and I'll put Julia Gillard's name in there. I, Julia Gillard, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law, so help me God. Now she doesn't believe in God, so she could take those few words out. But that's the oath. She did the affirmation. I, Julia Gillard, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law. There's your alteration section in the Constitution. It says there at section 128, and we only put portion of it because it's about 3 pages. I assume the average person has read this section, or I would assume the opposite. The proposed law for the alteration thereof must be passed by an absolute majority of each House of the Parliament, and not less than 2 nor more than 6 months after its passage through both houses. The proposed law shall be submitted in each state and territory to the electors qualified to vote for the election of members of the House of Rep, House and the Senate, etc. That's only portion because it would be boring. Please find section 128 because it's been breached so many times in the last 15 years, it's not funny. Now what I want to ask is, why did you let the breach occur? Now here we have section 53 of the Queensland Constitution, and I assume you've all got this tacked on the back of your toilet door so that you can have a real good read of it. It's actually better than reading the Courier Mail. Much better. It says this: a bill that expressly or implicitly provides for the abolition or alteration in the office of Governor, or that expressly or implicitly in any way affects any of the following sections of this Act, namely sections 1, 2, 2A, 11A, 11B, and this section 53, shall not be presented for assent by or in the name of the Queen unless it has first been approved by the electors. Now here comes the slam dunk. When they did what you call the State Request Act out of Queensland that went to the UK in 1984-85 to bring in the Australia Act, that State Request Act affected section 11A and 11B. Did any of you see it? Because it says there it's got to go to you, doesn't it? Or I've read it as a farmer who says, the lawyer says he's got to be wrong. It says, unless it has first been approved by the electors. Now listen to the next bit. In accordance with this section, and a bill so assented to consequent upon its presentment in contravention of this subsection shall be of no effect as an act. Now I want to say something to you loud and clear. What you just do there to the Australia Act? Because that's what they're relying on to get away with all this. And who was the architect of the Australia Act? Bob Hawke. With 6 premiers sitting in a cafe down in Canberra who said, how are we going to get this without waking the people up and using the referendum requirements? So they went back into section 51, subsection 39. And that's where you got your State Request Acts. The problem with the State Request Acts is it's caught by this. But the Queenslanders, so busy going to the Broncos and now the Gold Coast Footy Club and all the rest of what you want to do, you're about to become a communist country in 5 weeks. 5 weeks. I remember speaking to an old lady who had escaped one of the European bloc countries when she was 19 years old. They had to disguise her as a man to get her out of there. I don't know why and what the background of that was. But she said this to me. She said, when the country swung, all the Catholics and Protestants became communist overnight because there was no scripture in them. She said the Baptists and the Pentecostals, they had to shoot or put into jail. Is that what you want? Because, excuse the expression, I'm not going to use the word anymore, I'm not going to refrain from this word. The apathy of the Aussie has let this get this far. Now the only way you're going to make people say, look, take the Christian bit out, we need your knowledge on the law, but take the Christian bit out, and in fact take the Masonic bit out. I said, no, you're talking to the wrong bloke. Just get out of the road. So the Christian bit stays there, and so does the Masonic disclosure. That's where I'm at. Now, clearly that's saying that Section 53 is the most binding thing you have in this state. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's actually saying that if they contravened it, and forget about the time, because this is fraud. They tricked you by not revealing they had to do this. So it's fraud. Fraud has no statute bar, so don't worry about this 6 months or whatever, it's not relevant. Fraud has no limitation to when you start a court action. Have they contravened that section? So this goes back, it has its genesis in why I charged these people in the work that they did prior to the Australia Act, because they needed to get hold of the pen. Prior to the Australia Act, royal assents for constitutional work had to go back to the two UK houses, House of Commons, House of Lords. That's where they said you can't do this, this and this because you don't have jurisdiction to do this, this and this. That was bothering little Bob Hawke as an international socialist. So they said we can't pull off our program if we've got to keep going back to there. So in a little cafe in Canberra with the 6 premiers, they all made a cabal agreement. How do we trick the Aussie? Now, if Bob Hawke has a problem with me saying that, sue me, because that's all I want. I'm up to my eyeballs in this, so another thing doesn't matter. Bob Hawke will be held accountable to the Australia Act by the people of Australia through a grand jury. It's as simple as that. Because you can all see what the grand jury's going to decide, can't you? The grand jury's just going to say in the first half an hour, I haven't even been talking for an hour, I've already got an indictment from you, haven't I? I'm walking out the door with it in my pocket. Then the action begins, because there's only 2 places you can get an indictment, either from the public prosecutors or from a grand jury. Now, do you think the public prosecutors are going to give us an indictment to prosecute themselves? You got the point? But who are we really indicting? We're indicting hell. Is that a fair comment? We're saying we're sealing your entrance point. Because all this is spiritual. You can't have what you call physical treason in the country unless it's already occurred in the spirit. And where did that preachers let that happen? When they gave their allegiance to the corporation rather than to God. It's as simple as that. And that created spiritual treason. The Constitution Act 1867, Queensland. On a day not sooner than 2 months after the passage through the Legislative Assembly, a bill referred to in subsection 1, the question for the approval or otherwise of the bill shall be submitted to the electors. Now, there was a lot of bills you didn't get. Did you know you had the section in your Constitution? Please, put up your hand if you knew you had that section in your Constitution. I just want to see how many knew. Well, hello, folks. I can tell you clearly who did that to you. The international occult did that to you. Because one time, talking to a pastor down in one of the eastern towns, and I'd sat there, I was talking to him for 2 hours. He had a 30-year-old guy sitting alongside of him, it was his nephew. Didn't open his mouth. But I just shut the book after 2 hours and I said to him, you haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. Like, excuse the expression, he was thick as 2 short bricks. But I said, this bloke sitting beside you, he knows everything I've said to you. And I looked straight at him, I said, why do you know? And this was his answer. 15 years in the Navy, 15 years in the occult. I know exactly what you're saying. He doesn't. But I want to ask you, how did you get through our blanket? That's a good question. He ended up becoming a friend of mine and stayed with me for 3 months. So I got a lot of backroom stuff from him. Won't go into the background. But if I could tell you what they do, you'll know why you're not reading section 53. Would you read section 53 after today? I think you'll go straight there. And I think it should be on the front page of the Courier Mail. And did you see yesterday's Courier Mail? It's got a picture of Mr Tony Abbott protecting Michael Johnson, saying, if you've got any legal woes, we will fix them. Well, Tony Abbott's got his own because he's concealing this. I wonder who's going to fix this for him. Because remember, section 44 says, incapable of sitting or of being chosen. Now, what does the or of being chosen in relation to the leader of the Liberal Party mean? What it means is, if you've got 6 people in the back room who are the selection panel, they get charged for treason for choosing them. That's what it means. What has that just done to the selection panel, i.e. the powerhouse backroom boys of the Labor Party, the Liberal Party and the Greens? What has that just done to them? It's skedaddled them. And all I'm saying is, when they're convicted of this, don't take their passports off them. Just let them jump on a plane and go to wherever they've got their lullaby lands. Otherwise, you've got to pay to feed them after that. Now, don't you love our heading? It's the constitutional safeguard. I've got to step a little closer to read it, so excuse my bag. I will read it. Guess who put it in there? Joe did for you. And this is what it says. This is straight out of your Hansard's, Queensland, December 7, 1977. So any of you who are able to get Hansard's, get this one. It says this, extracts from Hansard's. My government believes that writing these existing provisions of constitutional law and practice into the Constitution will safeguard the existing system of parliamentary government in Queensland. It believes that it is necessary to entrench this safeguard against the possibility of changes being brought about by Parliament contrary to the wishes of the electorate. Do you like that? Well, hello, that's why he put it in there for you. But you didn't even know it was in there. It should be on the front page of the Courier Mail. Few people in Queensland today want a republic, especially the Socialist Republic. You're about to get that in 5 weeks. They got the document ready, which so many Labor Party people appear to want. We do not want a government of this state at any time taking advantage of the people to produce a republic by stealth.
What a hero Joe was.
You like this? If the people want it, then they should be able to clearly indicate so in a referendum. Only if the people of Queensland vote for a change will it be possible for Australia as a whole to become a republic, because you cannot change the monarchy in one part of Australia unless you change it in the whole.
Hero.
You give Joe a clap. I couldn't give a hoot if you're saying he would be a criminal in Queensland. Couldn't give a hoot. That's the best piece of statesmanship I've seen. That's why we put it in here. Now, Sir Charles Court in 1978 said exactly the same thing as the Premier of Western Australia in the Parliament in Western Australia in relation to Section 73 of their Constitution. And you've let these Labor boys come on in with an antichrist agenda and swept the preachers out by filling up. I got a meeting with the King of the Zulus one time in South Africa, and he said, Brian, I'm a really busy guy, so get my attention in 5 minutes. 4 hours later, we walked to the car. But one of the things he did ask me, he said, why are the preachers not revealing this? And I stood up and I opened up my pocket and I said to him, fill that up and I'll shut up too. But I said, my pocket is stitched up. And he said, I understand what you mean. One pastor in South Africa, he said this to me, and he was taping our conversation. It was just myself and his wife and he there, because he was the coordinator for a big denomination, and he came to talk with me. At one point he switched the tape off and said this to me. He said, the Freemasons are a week ahead of you to me. He said, they walked in here to my office a week ago with a briefcase, popped the lid, and you couldn't have fitted any more money in it. and just said, "That is for you, as long as you say nothing about us." And then he flicked the tape back on. Now, I won't edit that bit. It'll stay in this DVD. And I said to him, "You just told me there's a travelling briefcase travelling around the world, and now I know why the preachers are so quiet." See, when you get what you call silent money, you can't tell your wife you got it. You can't tell the tax boys you got it, because the only way they know you're going to take it is because they know what you're going to use it on. I won't go any further than that. Because when they strike, they already know the weakness. Now, here we've got, remember, treason is breach of allegiance. Please, I'm going to show you how the Crown has been taken out of West Australia, how the constitutional monarch has been taken out of West Australia, and how the oath of allegiance has been breached since January 1, 2004, which in actual fact means the last Parliament sat completely illegally, without one boo from a Christian church. Now, I'm glad that Brian has sort of said, "You've got my pulpit," and one pastor said to me, "Why's Queensland opened up to you?" And I said, "Don't you know the scripture that says the stone that the builders has rejected has become the chief cornerstone? The chief cornerstone of every Masonic lodge is laid in the northeast corner. What is the northeast corner of Australia? Queensland. What we're about to say to them is you put the wrong foundation stone down. That's why God has opened it up. And it's called the land of the Queen. Well, we're about to put that back the correct way. It should be called the land of the King. Because any time you want to find a Masonic thing, just turn the word around the other way. Temple Bar in Fleet Street in London means the bar of the temple, when you swing it the other way. Now you've got the bar of the temple, and the temple supplies both law and all money. Everything comes from that temple. Do you want to be captive to it? Well, you better be paying attention here, because you've got 5 weeks. The clock will tick in about half an hour. This is what it says. It's the Acts Amendment and Repeal Courts and Legal Practice Act 2003, Western Australia. It was enacted on January 1, 2004. The two men who signed it was Jim McGuinness, the Attorney General of West Australia. One of the men who made application to make me a vexatious litigant was equally then co-signed off by the Governor, Sanderson, who now thinks he's in retirement. We've got a surprise for him. Section 121, Section 63 is amended by the leading Crown, inserting said state or the Commonwealth. Anybody agree to that? Would you need a referendum to do it?
Absolutely, yes.
Because Joe said you can't alter any part of it unless you alter it in the whole of Australia. He got it right. Because the moment you interfere with any federation state, you're automatically infracting the federation. That's like sort of saying, look, I just don't want to play in this footy field or cricket field, I'm going over to that one. I'm going over to that one to play my footy over there, and every goal I kick on that field, you've got to make a score for me. And we're holding the ball here thinking, no, this is the playing field. What the hell are you doing over there? And why did the umpire score you? Because that's not an impartial umpire. That's why Chief Magistrate Gray could say, you won't be relying on the Constitution in my court. Well, hello, how did it ever become his court? Because what the Aussie didn't know in Victoria is they've turned all the courts into Victoria into what they call Business Unit 19. They've made it a corporation, stuck it under the Justice Department, and the boss of that is the Attorney General of Victoria. So he literally runs all the courts. He owns them. How do you like that? And when you look here in Queensland, you'll probably find the same thing has happened. Section 121, Schedule 1 is amended by the leading, our Sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth II, heirs and successors into 2 places where it occurs, in each place inserting instead the state of West Australia. Now, I'm only a farmer, but didn't that turn the hourglass up on federation? Prior to federation, West Australia was a colony. A federation had then become a state, which gave it a different status, And then down the road it spat its dummy and said, well, we're going to chuck all that federation stuff out, and now we are the state of Western Australia. The problem is, how did you get that legality? Because the Aussies never give it to you. Section 123. Section 633 is amended by the leading Crown and said state or the Commonwealth. Now, see those words there? That's why I charged all the big players, John Howard, Jeffrey and all the others, because the moment they put the word the Commonwealth in there, did they have an act of the Commonwealth to put them into that in the West Australian Act? No. Would they have needed to ask us in the Commonwealth referendum? Would they needed to have asked the West Australians in their referendum? Do you see the point I'm making? What I'm saying is, when somebody from this, and I'll say it quite speedily, went and saw a QC about what's this bloke saying, the QC said, that guy is talking absolute dribble and it's fraud. Now, I'd like that QC to put that on a piece of paper with his letterhead, because this is what he's really concealing from you. Is that correct? Now, I want to say something here about what they call, did Rudd say when he was the Prime Minister, we'll guarantee all deposits of the bank? He actually did say that. But did he put any legislation through the Parliament to get that to happen? What he did do, without telling the Aussie, is to give a guarantee to the private banks to lend them money. We got the document. It's 100-odd pages. But with that document comes what you call a government solicitor's certificate. Now, when you do what you call a certificate, it's got to be the lawyer's certificate that talks about any problem with the guarantee. And when any lawyer does a certificate, they have to put on that certificate what documents they had in front of them when they did the certificate, and the brief was, does the guarantee breach the Constitution? Now, the certificate says, we've got the certificate, that it doesn't breach the Constitution. Now, I would ask that barrister who did that certificate, did he have the Acts Amendment, Repeal Courts and Legal Practice Act on his table when he did the certificate? Because if he didn't, then he's in this fraud as well. And so is the bank that took that certificate. Is that a reasonable comment? Because what a grand jury can do, once it's impanelled, it can sit for a whole year. 23 people are chosen for a grand jury, and whatever they say, stop right there, that's an indictment. That person, they fill out the paperwork, it's then handed to the sheriff outside the door, and they go and get that person. And you can do that for a whole year. That's why they don't open this door to a grand jury. All these matters, there's not one grand jury been sat, not one grand jury has been impanelled to hear this matter. Should it? But should it hear in relation to the preachers concealing it? Because people say, oh, you can't charge a preacher. I said, why? If he's tickling the till, he's got to put it back. That's fair. That's what God says. He said, oh, look, I repented of stealing my neighbour's lawnmower, his ride-on lawnmower, actually. That's good. What you do with the ride-on lawnmower? It's still in my garage. Well, there's something got to happen here. You've got to get the sucker and put it back and tell him that you stole it. It's as simple as that. That's called restitution. People sort of say, I did this and this. I remember one pastor, he said, when the person came up and said, I have a problem with lust, the pastor just said to him, don't talk to me, talk to your wife. She'll sort it. That's what you call fix it up. There's always a fix it up issue. I used to have a lot of young evangelists come to try to stay at my house, try and get their lives in order to get ready to go out there to preach the gospel. And I used, being young evangelists, they always had history. To which I'd say to them, how many kids do you reckon you got hanging around out there that you don't want to own? Oh, maybe 2. I said, well, shut the book and go find them, and don't come back till you do. That's the deal. Section 123, Section 720 is amended by the leading Queen in asserting said the state. You see what's happened here? Did any of you know they did this? Would you think the government should know they did this? Would you think that Michael Jeffries should know that they did this? He was the Governor-General then, and he was the Governor of Western Australia before he became the Governor-General, who then handed the baton to Quentin Bryce, who was your Governor of Queensland. Do you see the plot? This is Psalm 2, verse 2. Section 123, section 14 is amended by the leading Crown and setting said state. Look how the hourglass turns. But all of this emanates from that preamble that I read in the beginning. It's all formed underneath the Crown of the United Kingdom. We can't change this without activating section 128. Any other change is illegal, unlawful and not valid in law, and it's actually a charge. That's why I charged. Section 124 is amended by the leading Crown and setting state. Section 124, 12. Look at this one. Section 11 is amended by the leading Her Majesty and is setting instead the Governor. Now, did you realise the Governor of Western Australia is your sovereign? Because it says it there. It says it there, doesn't it? They took the Majesty out and put him in. So doesn't that make the Governor the substituted monarch of Western Australia? I want to ask you a question. Didn't they send 12 senators from Western Australia to sit in the Senate in Canberra with all of this removed? But didn't you elect 12 senators, Queensland will be in the same condition, to go there to look after your law? What have I just done to the Senate? That's why I can say the first person who walks back into that Senate when it's prorogued will get charged with treason. Go back in your own peril now. Why? Because if we don't do that, we've got another document in 5 weeks that won't even have any chance of getting us back in there. You've got 5 weeks. Section 125, the schedule is amended by the leading our Sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth II heirs and successors in the 2 places where it occurs, and each place inserting instead the State of Western Australia. Section 126, Schedule 1, Item 1 is amended by the leading Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II heirs and successors in each place where it occurs, and inserting instead the State of West. Next one, please. Section 127, Crown's gone, prosecution's in. Section 128, Crown's gone, State is in. Section 128, Crown gone, State is in. Section 128, Crown gone, State in. Section 129, Crown gone, State in. Now, Section 130, please stop there. It says the amendments in this section are to the Supreme Court Act 1935. I'm now the Chief Justice of the State of Western Australia. You're bringing this matter to me. I don't want you to see that, because I don't want to tell you that this is full court of the Supreme Court of Western Australia. We took the Crown out and substituted me. Am I in jurisdiction? Have I committed an offence? Yes. Should I be hearing any judgments? Yes. Should I be hearing this application from the Attorney-General of Western Australia in conjunction with the Commonwealth DPP on Mr Brian Shaw to make him a vexatious litigant to stop him revealing all this? So is that a civil writ? Yes, it is. But what I did was charge them with treason. That's criminal jurisdiction. Which one is priority here? Amen. And that's what you're hearing. I'm only presenting my case. I'm only the accuser. I'm not here to look to say I'm a victim. I'm actually saying you're the victim if you don't see what's happened here. Is it too late? God likes it at all times when it's considered to be a hopeless case. That's when he says, stand back, because you've all done what you thought you could do. Now you show, I'll show you what I can do. That's when he loves it. Next slide, please. We're still in this section, the Supreme Court. Section 130, Section 9 is amended by the leading Her Majesty and asserting instead the Governor. What we effectively have is the Chief Justice of the West Australian Court, Wayne Martin, sitting around a coffee table somewhere in Perth, the Governor of Perth sitting around the same coffee table, the DPP of the Commonwealth, DPP of the state, sitting around the same coffee table, sort of saying, what title do you want, what title do you want, what title do you want, because we're chucking all that out and we're taking over. Isn't that a coup? It's a coup d'état. And they have a magnificent act in West Australia. It's called the Public Interest Disclosure Act. It actually says any person who discloses this has criminal and civil immunity, and any person who wishes a writ against that person is a $22,000 damages claim. 2 people went on that writ against me, which was the Attorney General and the Commonwealth DPP. And when they wanted $25,000 for me, which is the current cost order, for hearing all this to conceal it, I just simply said, well, I'm only a farmer. But I said, if I have a $44,000 claim and you have a claim for 25, well, we'll just settle the difference. Take your 25 out of the 44 and send me the balance. I said, it doesn't work like that. So they're still looking for me. They'll find me down the court of law, so I'm not hard to find. Section 130, Section 119, I want you to really get your teeth around this one and really let this one sink in. Section 119 is amended by the leading to Her Majesty or any of her subjects. Now get your teeth around that one. What happened to you? Beg your pardon? Exactly. But they took you out. Do you see why I charged them? This is like a person. I said to one farmer who lives next door to me, I said, do you know anything about any of this at all? No. I said, well, let me give you the practicality. I said, that truck over there you've got fully loaded with hay, about $40,000 Kenworth, stack of hay. I said, I'm going to walk in your gate tomorrow night, I'm going to get in that sucker and I'm going to drive it up the road and I'm going to sell the truck and the hay. What are you going to do? I said, don't tell me you're going to go back to bed and just say, well, he took it, he was entitled to it. I said, someone's just walked in, took your constitution, walked over there, shredded it and said, now we own the lot. And you just go back to work like nothing happened. I said, if you don't know what's happened, you're going to lose the lot. I said to one farmer in Hamilton, I said, how many commodities do you grow down on your farm? He said, oh, 6. I said, you're the 7th commodity. Yeah. Section 130(10). Section is amended by the leading. Now that used to say Her Majesty's Attorney General. They've turned it around to say the Attorney General. Isn't that a good swift of the pen? I mean, you wouldn't want this lawyer working for you. There's a whole group of occult lawyers sitting there working out how to slam dunk the Aussie while the Aussie goes to the football, goes to the market and goes to Bunnings on a Sunday. Is that reasonable? Yes. That's what you call trafficking. It's the merchandise of the soul. They love it because that's what you call the preoccupation. That's where you get them all interested over there. Now remember the last time when I was in this pulpit I said to you, when you play a grand final in AFL down in Melbourne, there's about 40 or 50 active people out there on the ground. There's 100,000 people sitting on their butts, all playing the game in their head. Shouldn't we be reversing that right now? Yes. So that there's 100,000 in this issue rather than 40. Is that a fair comment? Yes. People said, when you come back in, go to there and there, but this needs to be in the Brisbane Centre. There's about 4,000 seats in there. Can you fill it? Do you need to fill it? Because if you don't show what you call a mass lot of people in a place, they're looking at you to say, they don't understand, we're getting away with this. Yeah. Do you need to fill the Brisbane Centre? And that's real easy, by just simply walking into any church, any pastor and says, you've got 1 week to sort that, and in the meantime send your people to the Brisbane Centre, otherwise we're charging you. Why? Because the moment that's put in anyone's hand, they've got knowledge. Knowledge means fix it straight away, because we know who this is given to. We track everyone that gets it. Because the grand jury would say, who concealed it? Here's your list. They're all gone. They're indicted. What's fair here? A trial of the issue. But as I said to the President of the Court of Appeal, I said, here's the olive branch I'll give you. That's an unusual statement from the bar table. He said, what? I said, I'll let all the charges sit sine die. I'll give you grant jurisdiction to make it a trial of the issue as long as we get that indictment before it begins, because we won't trust you not to give us the indictment. So it's got to go to grand jury to get the indictment and then make it a trial of the issue, to which he then said, Mr Shaw, what would be the issues? I said, no, that's what we've got to sit down and work out before it goes in there. But I said, I can give you one issue right now. Should we have a Masonic government or a